Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Outlaws and Gunslingers, or welcome to Outlaws and Gunslingers, whichever one you are at this moment. And we bring to you, we're going back all the way back in time to 1921. We're revisiting the 20s here in this podcast with another riot.
Oklahoma. I mean, says it all right there, right?
Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Why does it say it all? What all does it say?
All about racial tension. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Another riot and another, some more killings and supposedly the single worst incident of racial violence in American history is what we're seeing. Talking about the Tulsa Race Massacre, also known as Black Wall Street Massacre, also known as the Tulsa Race Riots. We're your hosts, Bang Dang, Bang here, Bang Dang. Whoa, Bang here, Dang over there, and we'll get right into this one. This is going to be a long one. Lots of stuff going on here, and lots of murders.
So it is.
Tulsa Race Massacre, like I said, also known as the Race Riot or the Black Wall Street Massacre, was a 2-day-long massacre that took place between May 31st, June 1st, 1921, when mobs of white residents, some of whom had been appointed as deputies and armed by city officials,
Of course they were.
attacked black residents and destroyed homes and businesses in the Greenwood district in Tulsa and Oklahoma. The event is considered, like I said, one of the worst incidents of racial violence in American history. It has been described as one of the deadliest terrorist attacks as well in the history of the United States. Attackers burned and destroyed more than 35 square blocks of the neighborhood, at the time one of the wealthiest black communities in the United States, colloquially known as Black Wall Street.
Territory of northern Oklahoma had been established for the forced resettlement of Native Americans from the southeast. They're like, all you Floridans and Georgia Indians, you're going to Oklahoma.
You're going to hell, little Georgians or little Oklahomans, you're going to hell.
Some of whom owned slaves.
Of course.
Oh, look at that. The first black inhabitants of Indian Territory were those who came as enslaved people with their native owners. Dang, Indians had black slaves?
Of course they did. I mean, might as well.
Wow.
Everybody else is doing it.
Right? They're like, okay, look at this shit. Except for they probably worked in the fields with them.
Probably, yeah.
Others had received many settlers from the South whose families had been slaveholders before the Civil War.
Okay, so now you got Indians, slaveholders, and slaves.
Right.
That's not a good recipe for getting along.
All going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma was admitted as a state on the 16th of November, 1907. The newly created state legislature passed racial segregation laws,
Of course they did.
commonly known as Jim Crow laws.
Yep.
As a first order of business.
First order. The very first thing we need to do is
Yes.
racial segregation.
Yes. Let's put these people in their place. 1907 Oklahoma Constitution did not call for strict segregation. Delegates feared that, should they include such restrictions, United States President Theodore Roosevelt would veto the document.
Yeah, Theo was one of the few good ones, huh?
Right. Still, the first law passed by the new legislators segregated all rail travel, and voter registration rules effectively disenfranchised non-whites.
Yeah, so nothing new so far here, huh?
Yep.
This meant that they were also barred from either serving on juries or serving in local public offices.
Right,
and
couldn't
stuff.
do any of that.
These laws were enforced until they were ruled unconstitutional after the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 65. Major cities passed laws that imposed additional restrictions, though. August 4th, 1916, Tulsa passed an ordinance that mandated residential segregation by forbidding members of either race from residing on any block where 3/4 or more of the residents were members of the other race. Although the United States Supreme Court declared such an ordinance unconstitutional the following year, Tulsa and many other cities continued to establish and enforce segregation for the next 3 decades.
Why not, right?
Hey, nobody's doing nothing about it.
Right. Many servicemen returned to Tulsa following the end of the First World War in 1918. Many servicemen returned to Tulsa following the end of the First World War in 1918. And as they tried to re-enter their labor force, social tensions and white supremacist sentiment increased in cities where job competition was fierce.
Right.
Economic slump in northeastern Oklahoma increased the level of unemployment. The American Civil War, which ended in 1865, was still in living memory. Of course it was. It's still today, probably.
What? 40, 50 years
Right.
running?
I mean,
50, yeah.
Civil rights for African Americans were lacking in these areas. The Ku Klux Klan was resurgent After a popular 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation, the Ku Klux Klan decided to show their dirty little faces again.
Like, we're
They're
back.
like, guess what, boys? I found my freaking white hood. Don't mind the creases.
Dusted it off.
Since 1915, the KKK had been growing in urban chapters across the country. Its first significant appearance in Oklahoma occurred on the 12th of August, 1921. By the end of 1921, 3,200 of Tulsa's 72,000 residents were Klan members. That's a lot.
Yeah.
According to one estimate, that's what that one estimate said.
Right.
I wonder what other estimates were, or an actual count. How about that? Early 20th century, lynchings were common in Oklahoma as part of a continuing effort to assert and maintain white supremacy. By 1921, at least 31 people, mostly men and boys, had been lynched in the newly formed state. 26 were black. The other ones are probably
Indians.
either that or
Asian.
black sympathizers.
Right. At the same time, black veterans pushed to have their civil rights enforced, believing that they had earned full citizenship as the result of their military service. Right. And what became known as the Red Summer of 1919, industrial cities across the Midwest and Northeast experienced severe race riots. Which it's like every other decade, race riots, in which whites attacked black communities, sometimes with the assistance of local authorities.
Right.
As a booming oil city, Tulsa also supported a large number of affluent, educated, and professional African-American residents. Greenwood was a district in Tulsa that was organized in 1906 following Booker T. Washington's 1905 tour of Arkansas, the Indian Territory, and Oklahoma. It was a namesake of the Greenwood district, which Washington had established as his own district in Tuskegee, Alabama, 5 years earlier.
Oh.
Greenwood became so prosperous that it became known as the Negro Wall Street, now commonly referred to as the Black Wall Street, right? Yeah, lots of rich black people in there, huh?
It's good. Fantastic. Right. Most black people live together in the district.
I would assume.
Black Americans had created their own businesses and services in this enclave, including several grocers, 2 newspapers, 2 movie theaters, nightclubs, and numerous churches.
Always numerous churches.
Black professionals, including doctors, dentists, lawyers, clergy, served the community. They're like, we got all this for you. Whatever they got, we do too.
We got it.
During this trip to Tulsa in 1905, Booker T. Washington encouraged the cooperation, economic independence, and excellence being demonstrated there. He encouraged all this. He said, you see this, guys?
This is what we need all over the place.
We can do this everywhere.
Right.
Everywhere. Greenwood residents selected their own leaders and raised capital there to support economic growth. In the surrounding area, that's the problem. That's the thing with segregation. They got everything their own there, and you can't expect people to intertwine with each other when
you got your own things going.
Right.
And probably in this area, the black residents are probably doing way better off than the white people in this area.
That's what it's looking like. In the surrounding areas of northeastern Oklahoma, they also enjoy relative prosperity and participated in the oil boom.
Well, good for them. Well, this all came to a crashing halt for this neighborhood and the riots inciting on Memorial Day of May 30th, 1921. 19-year-old Dick Rowland, a black shoe shiner who was employed at a Main Street Shine Parlor, and entered the only elevator in the nearby Drexel building at 319 South Main Street in order to use the top floor colored restroom, which his employer had arranged for use by his black employees. You would think you could avoid that if you're going to have segregated restrooms, have them on the first floor.
Yeah, all the way up to the top floor.
There, he encountered Sarah Page, the 17-year-old white elevator operator who was on duty. Right. Whether and to what extent Dick Rowland and Sarah Page knew each other has long been a matter of speculation.
I'm sure they did.
The two likely knew each other, at least by sight, because Rowland would have regularly ridden in Page elevator on his way to and from the restroom.
Exactly.
Right? A clerk at Renberg's, a clothing store on the first floor of the Drexel, heard what sounded like a woman scream, saw a young black man rushing from the building. The clerk went to the elevator and found Page in a distraught state.
Uh-oh. Ooh, he instantly thought bad thoughts about that black guy that was running. Thinking that she had been sexually assaulted, he summoned the authorities.
He's like, authorities, I summon you.
Apart from the clerk's interpretation that Rowland had attempted to rape Page, many explanations had been given for the incident, with the most common explanation being that Dick Rowland tripped as he got into the elevator, and as he tried to catch his fall, he grabbed onto the arm of Sarah Page, who then screamed. Others suggested that Rowland and Page had a lover's quarrel, which is
maybe they were banging. Maybe they were banging in the elevator on the way to the top and stuff.
I would believe that
right.
one.
You know how those white girls like that dark meat? The The 2001 Oklahoma Commission final report notes, 2001, that it was unusual for both Rowland and Page to be working downtown on Memorial Day when most stores and businesses were closed.
Damn right.
But it was also speculated that Rowland was there because the Shoe Shine parlor which he had worked for may have been open, obviously, to draw on some of the parade traffic.
Obviously.
While Page had been required to work in order to transport building employees and their families to the parade viewing spots on the building's upper floors.
Makes sense now.
Right.
So there goes that whole theory.
Right.
That whole paragraph was worthless.
Right.
Although the police questioned Page, no written account of her statement has been found. But apparently, she told the police that Rowland had grabbed her arm and nothing more. And she would not press any charges.
Yeah, they were definitely. She was like, "What the hell are you talking to Cynthia down there? I saw you." Mm-hmm.
The police determined that what happened between the two teenagers was less than assault and conducted a low-key investigation rather than launching a manhunt for her alleged assailant.
Right.
Regardless of whether or not assault had occurred, Rowland had reason to be fearful, as African-American men accused of raping white women were often prime targets for lynch mobs.
Yeah.
There was no trial or anything. You're guilty. Guilty. Especially in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Rowland fled to his mother's house in the Greenwood neighborhood.
Good for him. Well, I don't know if it's good for him.
Right.
On the morning after the incident, Henry Carmichael, a white detective, and Henry C. Pack, a black patrolman, located Rowland on Greenwood Avenue and detained him. Pack was one of two black officers on the city's police force of about 45 officers. Rowland was initially taken to the Tulsa City Jail at the corner of 1st and Main. Late that day, Police Commissioner J.M. Atkinson said he had received an anonymous telephone call threatening Rowland's life.
Oh.
He ordered Rowland transferred to the more secure jail on the top floor of the Tulsa County Courthouse. Rowland was well known among attorneys and other legal professionals within the city, many of whom he shined their shoes for.
And there's like, this boy's not wrong, this boy.
Right.
It was simply a lover's quarrel.
Some witnesses later recounted hearing several attorneys defend Rowland in their conversations with one another. One of the men said, "Why, I know that boy, and I have had known him for a good while. That's not him. That's not in him. That's
Not what happened.
He wouldn't do that."
Right. Tulsa Tribune, owned, published, and edited by Richard Lloyd Jones, and one of the two white-owned papers which were published in Tulsa. So there's only two white-owned papers in Tulsa, and then two the
Blacks.
Nice. That's good stuff. It's equal.
Right.
They broke this story.
Or how about equal? How about they just report
together.
whole news?
Together. Well, anyway, the Tulsa Tribune broke the story in the afternoon's edition with the headline, "Nabbed Negro for attacking girl in elevator." That's a dumb headline.
Nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator. Are they calling for people to get him?
There should be a question mark there or something. Or, anyhow, that's what it said. Nabbed Negro for attacking girl in an elevator. And then they described the alleged incident. According to some witnesses, the same edition of the Tribune included an editorial warning of a potential lynching of Rowland, titled, "To Lynch Negro Tonight." The paper was known at the time to have a sensationalist style of news writing. I guess so.
I may have well called it the Tulsa Enquirer.
Right. Allegedly, all original copies of that issue of the paper have apparently been destroyed. I hope so. Actually, no. No, they need to be preserved to show the stupidity. And the relevant page is missing from microfilm copy, of course.
Of course.
Jeez, oh, Pete. It says the freaking
FBI written all over it. The FBI wasn't even here yet.
The Tulsa Race Riot Commission in 1997 offered a reward for the copy of the editorial, which went unclaimed. I'm sorry, that's just one thing we cannot unearth.
Copy of the Tulsa Tribune of June 1st, 1921 was found. On the front page was an article headline, "Nab Negro for attacking girl in an elevator." The editorial page was also found. It did not have an article headline, "To Lynch a Negro Tonight," though.
Okay.
Other newspapers of the time, like the Black Dispatch and the Tulsa World, did not call attention to any such editorial.
Because they knew.
Right. So the exact content of the column and whether or not it existed at all remains in dispute.
Right.
However, Chief of Detectives James Patton attributed the cause of the riots entirely to the newspaper account and stated, "If the facts in the story as told the police had only been printed, I do not think there would have been any riot whatsoever."
The afternoon edition of the Tribune hit the streets shortly after 3 p.m. Soon news spread of a potential lynching. By 4 o'clock, local authorities were on alert. White residents began congregating at and near the Tulsa County Courthouse. By sunset, around 7:30 p.m., hundreds of white residents assembled outside the courthouse. And they appeared to have the makings of a lynch mob. And they're like, "Damn, that looks like a lynch mob out there." How do you know? There's only several hundred.
I think I see a noose.
Willard M. McCullough, the newly elected sheriff of Tulsa County, was determined to avoid events such as the 1920 lynching of white murder suspect Roy Belton in Tulsa. He's like, "We don't need another one of those," which had occurred during the term of his predecessor.
Dude was white, though.
Right. The sheriff took steps to ensure the safety of Rowland. McCullough organized his deputies into a defensive formation around
What the hell
Rowland.
is this? Like I take my inspiration from General Grant.
Right. Well, they formed a whole a ring around Rowland, and he was terrified. He's like, they're going to kill me. And they're like, we got you, boy.
We got you.
Which
is weird that they're actually defending him.
It's fantastic. The Guthrie Daily Leader reported that Rowland had been taken to the county jail before crowds started to gather.
Good for them, I guess.
Right.
Sheriff positioned 6 of his men, armed with rifles and shotguns, on the roof of the courthouse. He disabled the building's elevator and had his remaining men barricade themselves at the top of the stairs with orders to shoot any intruders on sight.
Oh, damn.
Sheriff went outside and tried to talk to the crowd, and he said, why don't y'all go home? But they said, no avail. According to an account by Scott Ellsworth, sheriff was hooted down, apparently.
They hooted him.
They hooted him. At about 8:20 p.m., 3 white men entered the courthouse, demanding that Rowland be turned over to them.
Dang.
Although vastly outnumbered by the growing crowd on the street, Sheriff McCullough turned the men away.
Dude.
Said, you get out of here. Lock the fucking courthouse doors.
That place just went back 50 years.
I know.
And now they're like, now we got to start all over. Jeez.
Lock the doors. Why are people allowed to just go inside? What are they going to do? Burn the house down? Burn the courthouse down? Doubtful. This whole thing could have been, well, I don't know about the riots coming up, but at least the little situation in the courthouse could have been avoided.
Yeah, that's the problem right there. This is a effect of
Of a cause?
right of Oklahoma not following the national freaking law.
Obviously.
And this is what happens. And when Washington D.C. ain't smart enough, or they're ignorant on the position that's going on, this is also what happens. Or do you think they knew and just didn't care?
Obviously, they didn't care.
Right. It's like, hey, man, we put it in law. What do you want us to do after that? Well, enforce it.
Right.
What?
Enforce it. Did you hear this guy? He said enforce it.
A few blocks away on Greenwood Avenue, members of the black community gathered to discuss the situation at Gurley's Hotel. Given the recent lynching of Belton, a white man accused of Moida, they believed that Rowland was greatly at risk.
Right, you know they're talking about if they're gonna hang a white man,
Right.
what do you think they're gonna do to Rowland?
Right. I think maybe most of it, you think? I think their crowd was split on just because it was a crime like that. Because you don't mess with women back in the day or touch them like that.
Yeah, but how many instances before then were black dudes falsely accused of raping chicks and getting lynched?
It's even worse,
I mean,
too, back then, especially if it's a black guy and a white chick.
What was that? Rosewood or whatever?
Jeez. Many black residents were determined to prevent the crowd from lynching Rowland.
Obviously, I would assume so.
But they were divided about tactics.
Well, what do we do to prevent this?
Young World War I veterans prepared for a battle by collecting guns and
You know
ammo.
damn well they're like, we just got back from the war. We're ready still.
Fuck yeah! Let's go! Older, more prosperous men feared a destructive confrontation that would likely cost them dearly.
Yeah, well, they were
This
right.
is not going to turn out well. We got to calm these people down.
That's why they're prosperous.
O.W. Gurley stated that he had tried to convince the men that there would be no lynching, but the crowd responded that Sheriff McCullough had personally told them their presence was required. And they were like, "No,
They want us to come down here, man."
told us, hey, man."
Well, about 9:30 p.m., a group of approximately 50 to 60 black men armed with rifles and
That's
shotguns.
the worst part.
They arrived to the jail to support the sheriff and his deputies in defending Rowland from the mob. Corroborated by 10 witnesses, Attorney James Luther submitted to the grand jury that they were following the orders of Sheriff McCullough, who publicly denied he gave any orders. And he says, I think James Luther is saying this, he says, I saw a car full of Negroes driving through the streets with guns. I saw Bill McCullough and told them those Negroes would cause trouble. McCullough tried to talk to them, and they got out and stood in single file. W.G. Daggs was killed near Boulder and 6th Street. I was under the impression that a man with authority could have stopped and disarmed them. I saw Chief of Police on south side of courthouse on top step talking. I did not see any officer except for the chief. I walked in the courthouse and met McCullough in about 15 feet of his door. Told him that these Negroes were going to make trouble, and he said he had told them to go home. He went out and told the whites to go home, and one said, they said, you told them to come up here. McCullough said, I did not, and the Negro said, you did tell us to come.
So what happened there?
So he clearly told them to come, but now he's denying it to save face in front of everybody.
Jeez. Well, half that crowd that was against it anyway, they should have stood up there with the 50 to 60 blacks.
Who said half of them were against it?
A lot of them were.
We don't know that.
Having seen the armed black men, some of the more than 1,000 whites who had been at the courthouse went home for their guns. Like, you know what? I'll be right back.
Look, they didn't even take him with them the first time.
Yeah, see? Others head for the National Guard Armory.
Oh, jeez.
They're like, we'll just go over there. There's guns there.
Right. It's closer.
And it's on the corner of 6th and Norfolk Avenue, where they plan to arm themselves.
I would assume.
The armory contained a supply of small arms and ammo.
I'm sure it did. So it's got an armory.
Major James Bell of the 180th Infantry Regiment learned of the mounting situation downtown and the possibility of a break-in, and he consequently took measures to prevent it. He was like,
I would hope so.
Shit. How many people do you think he has? None of them there, probably.
Well, you're about to see, I guess.
He called the commanders of the 3 National Guard units in Tulsa, who ordered all the Guard members to put on their uniforms and report quickly to the Army.
Get your ass over there.
Half of them were probably at the courthouse.
I know, they're like, fuck. Like, damn it, guys, sorry.
When I see you, you better just move. I have to take you out. When a group of whites arrived and began pulling at the grating over a window, Bell went outside to confront the crowd of about 300.
They got some damn balls going to a damn armory.
Well, 300 400 of them, man. They were taking this shit over. Bell went outside to confront the crowd of about 300 to 400 men. Bell told them that the Guard members inside were armed and prepared to shoot anyone who tried to enter. After this show of force, the crowd withdrew from the. He was like, no. The crowd was like, okay.
Oh.
We tried.
All right. At the courthouse, the crowd had swollen to nearly 2,000 by this time, many of them now armed. Several local leaders, including Reverend Charles W. Kerr, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, tried to dissuade mob action.
Right.
Chief of Police John A. Gustafson later claimed that he tried to talk the crowd into going home. Anxiety on Greenwood Avenue was rising. Many black residents worried about the safety of Rowland.
Yeah.
You think, like, they're not just like, screw this kid. Just give him to him and then all this shit will go away, right?
Right.
Or how about just whisk the kid out of town?
Right.
I mean, small groups of armed black men ventured toward the courthouse in automobiles, partly for reconnaissance and to demonstrate that they're prepared to take necessary action to protect him.
Right.
Many white men interpreted these actions as a Negro uprising, quote unquote, and became concerned.
Yeah, I would say the way they rolled in like that would be a little.
What are you talking about? You got 2,000 men in front of the courthouse with guns?
Yeah, they're standing there, and you can easily walk up there as well.
Yes. All right, well, that's what they did. They drove up there in automobiles.
Yeah. Like 50 of them there hanging outside with their
We don't know that.
with their single shot freaking rifles.
I don't know. Eyewitnesses reported gunshots, presumably fired into the air, increasing in frequency during the evening. In Greenwood, well, we know night falls, then everything gets a little hotter. Greenwood, rumors begin to fly. In particular, a report that whites were storming the courthouse. Oh, shit. That's not January 6th.
Uh-oh. Shortly after 10 p.m., a second larger group, approximately 75 armed black men, decided to go to the courthouse.
Yep, they got some alcohol in them by now, and they're like, fuck it, let's go.
They offered their support to the sheriff. Well, that's cool. I bet they were nice and cordial. And the sheriff was like, we decline.
Yeah.
We respectfully decline, and we wish for you just to go home. We got this
want
under
everybody
control.
to go home.
We're trying to get everybody to go home. It would help if you just listen, and maybe everybody else would listen too. They're like, well, they're not going home. I ain't going home.
I ain't going home. He's like, well, then fine. You just stand out here, but I don't need your help.
Right. There are conflicting reports about the exact time and nature of the incident or incidents that immediately precipitated the massacre. According to 2001 commission.
Why the hell are they just now having a commission 90 years later, first of all? 80 years later.
Because they're stupid. According to a 2001 commission, it says, quote, as the black men were leaving, a white man attempted to disarm a tall African-American World War I veteran. Can't do that. Mm-mm. A struggle ensued, and a shot rang out, end quote. Then, according to the sheriff, all hell broke loose. Because what happened after that, Sheriff? I can just tell you right now. All hell broke loose that night. At the end of the exchange of gunfire, 12 people were dead. 10 white and 2 black.
Holy shit. Well, white people ain't going to be happy.
No.
Another first-hand account originates from Eloise Taylor Butler, the daughter of the famed Peg Leg Taylor, who was 19 years old and in Greenwood on that day. Who's the famed Peg Leg Taylor?
Right.
According to Eloise's great-granddaughter, who passed on the story that Eloise told her while the initial story was that it started at the courthouse. In fact, it escalated to the courthouse. It started, like, down the street from the courthouse. That's a quote. That's a quote. Started, like, down the street from the courthouse. Great-granddaughter. Okay. This key inciting incident reportedly occurred when a group of around 6 white men approached and beat down a lone black man.
Oh, I can believe that all day.
Black store owners reportedly then came out of nearby shops to help defend the black man, and, quote-unquote, once they started defending him, they ended up having to shoot.
I mean, what are you going to do, right?
The account further notes, the black store owners fought back the best they could, but the white mob started on that end of town where the black people started fighting. The white mob set those initial shops on fire at the very beginning.
At the very beginning? Oh, I don't know about that. A 2001 commission itself does note that, quote, African-American homes and businesses along Archer were the first targets, end quote. of the white mob's arson.
Right.
These could possibly be the same shops as, quote, down the street from the courthouse.
Right. So maybe she's right.
Well, this inciting incident reportedly took place and establishes an immediate motive for those particular shops to be targeted first.
Right.
Okay. Of course, it may simply be the case that they were targeted first only out of convenience, since they're Archer being the very first street on Greenwood side of the Frisco tracks. So, yeah, why would you skip?
Why would you go to the other end of the neighborhood
and
then
then start this way? How about we got to come back anyway, so let's just walk down.
I mean, right? You're good.
On the way back.
That'd actually be smarter.
Because this time, then we're going to have to walk through.
We're going to have to walk away. Yeah.
Right. So let's do the sign, and
Right.
we're gonna say we're here peacefully, guys, as we're walking through, and on the way back, like psych. Like, damn, we should never trusted them. I knew someone was up.
Fell for that shit again.
Yeah. Moreover, while the Taylor account seems adamant that this incident occurred before the initial gunfight at the courthouse, and then escalated to the courthouse, it's still possible that the incident Taylor witnessed was itself simply a product of the rolling gunfight that is known to have ensued across the streets of Tulsa following that first widely reported exchange of gunfire. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Right, it's like our one episode where the dude said that he was immediately accosted by those guys
right
in the Green Glenville riots. Right. But then other people said they were talking and they were there for a minute. So she don't know. It could have been going on at the same time. Then she heard of the gunfight at the courthouse and was like, well, that had to happen, you know. I mean, you never know. I don't know.
I say, yeah.
Well, the gunshots triggered an almost immediate response with both sides firing on the other. Oh, geez. The first battle was said to only last a few seconds or so, but took a toll as 10 whites and 2 black men lay dead or dying in the street.
Dang.
The black men who had offered to provide security retreated toward Greenwood. A rolling gunfight ensued. See, they're just going down the street shooting at each other now.
Oh, yeah.
The armed white mob pursued the black contingent towards Greenwood, with many stopping to loot local stores for additional weapons and ammunition.
Oh, shit.
Along the way, bystanders, many of whom were leaving a movie theater after a show, were caught off guard by the mobs and fled.
Oh, shit.
Panic set in as the white mob began firing on any black people in the crowd.
Oh, shit.
The white mob also shot and killed at least one white man in the confusion.
Yeah.
According to Oklahoma Historical Society, some in the mob were deputized by police and instructed to get a gun and get a N-word. I thought the local police was on the rolling guy's side, and now they're deputizing people to tell them to go kill black people?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
The whole thing is...
What the hell's going on here?
McCullough is a little fishy guy.
Yeah, obviously.
Around 11 p.m., members of the National Guard unit began to assemble at the Armory to organize a plan to subdue the rioters. Like, we got to do something here, boys.
Yeah.
Several groups were deployed downtown to set up guard at the courthouse, police station, and other public facilities. Forget that. You want to go...
Well, that's true, because the police are just the local police, and the McCullough's the sheriff, so...
Right.
Maybe he was...
Oh, the local police guys were...
Yeah, you know, they're racist as shit.
You know. I mean, anyway, I wouldn't send National Guard to the courthouse, police station, or public facilities.
I would.
You send them to where the shit's happening.
Well, they're still all at the courthouse, too.
You can send a couple
The police
there.
station is where the kid is now, apparently.
Right, at least to the police station or the courthouse. He's at one of them. Members of the local chapter of the American Legion. Shit. Members of the local chapter of the American Legion joined in on the patrols of the streets. Good for them. The forces appeared to have been deployed to protect the white districts adjacent to Greenwood. And you got to protect that. And they did the same thing.
Goes out at Glenville, yeah.
And they did a couple years ago.
2020, yeah.
To Beverly Hills or whatever.
Ain't getting into these gated communities.
Right. This is far. You can do whatever you want, but this is as far as you go.
Yeah.
And they were like, we respect that decision. On our way, boys.
You burn your own buildings down.
The National Guard rounded up numerous black people and took them to the convention hall on Brady Street for detention.
Why?
Right. Around midnight, small crowd of whites assembled outside the courthouse again. Members of the crowd were heard yelling explicitives. They're like, and,
Right.
and all that. And calling for Rowland to be lynched, but ultimately did not storm the courthouse.
Yeah, well, we move on to Wednesday, June 1st.
But there's nothing, no, they're allowed to protest.
I guess, right.
Let them be out there screaming all the hell they want.
Well, by this time, there's 12 people dead laying in front of the courthouse, probably.
Right, after that, it's not a peaceful protest anymore. So everybody's got to go home. So, yeah, by this time, get the hell out of here.
And it's 12 o'clock, too.
Right.
There's also, like, ordinances.
Right. Jeez, oh, Pete. You guys are just throwing all laws out the books tonight, huh?
Right. Wednesday morning, throughout the early morning hours, groups of armed white and black men squared off in gunfights. It was just the whole city fighting.
Jeez.
Fighting was concentrated along sections of the Frisco tracks, which was a dividing line between the black and white commercial districts. Isn't it always railroad tracks?
Yeah, well, got to be something, right?
A rumor circulated that more black people were coming by train from Muskogee to help with the invasion of Tulsa. And now it's an invasion.
Right.
At one point, passengers on an incoming train were forced to take cover on the floor of the train cars as they had arrived in the midst of crossfire. Jeez, with the train taking hits on both sides. Small groups of whites made brief forays by car into Greenwood, indiscriminately firing into businesses and residences. They often received return fire.
Obviously they did.
Holy shit, dude. There's a whole war zone going on in
Crazy
there.
stuff, man. Meanwhile, white rioters threw lighted oil rags into several buildings along Archer Street, igniting them. As unrest spread to other parts of the city, many middle-class white families who employed black people in their homes as live-in cooks and servants were accosted by white rioters.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, you're sympathizers, bud. You're going down. They demanded the families turn over their employees to be taken to detention centers around the city. Dang, jeez, this is ridiculous.
I know.
Many white families complied.
Oh, my gosh.
But those who refused were subjected to attacks and vandalism in a toin.
Complied. What a bunch of pussies. Here you go.
There's a water problem.
Oh, my God.
And then their workers are like, Janice, I've raised your children for the past 12 years.
Dude, I cleaned your nasty, soiled underwear. I know your fucking secrets and shit. And this is how you do me,
you told
stupid
me
sluts. Wow, dude. Yeah, that's fucked.
Jeez.
Around 1 a.m., the white mob began setting fires, mainly in businesses on commercial Archer Street and the southern edge of the Greenwood district. As news traveled among the Greenwood residents in the early morning hours, many began to take up arms in defense of their neighborhoods, while others began a mass exodus from the city. They said, I'm leaving.
Jeez.
Throughout the night, both sides continued fighting, sometimes only sporadically, though. Okay. As crews from the Tulsa Fire Department arrived to put out fires, they were turned away at gunpoint. Don't you dare touch that. Scott Ellsworth makes the same claim, but his reference makes no mention of firefighters. So just putting out the fires. Mary E. Jones Parrish, who was a survivor of the massacre, gave only praise for the National Guard.
Another Ellsworth reference states that they were fired upon by the white mob. He says it would mean a fireman's life to turn a stream of water on one of those Negro buildings. They shot at us all morning when we were trying to do something, but none of my men was hit. There's not a chance in the world to get through that mob into the Negro district.
He said, nope, you ain't touching these buildings, firemen.
Right. By 4 a.m., an estimated 24 black-owned businesses had been set ablaze. Tulsa co-founder and KKK member W. Tate Brady participated in the riot as a night watchman. He's white. I got it.
He's a Tulsa co-founder? Jeez.
Right.
What the hell?
Jeez, oh, Pete. This land press reported that previously Brady led the Tulsa outrage, the November 7th, 1917 tarring and feathering of members of the Industrial Workers of the World. An incident understood to be economically and politically rather than racially motivated. It was probably a little bit of both. Mostly.
Industrial Workers of the World was probably like a union, and
that's probably mostly
they wanted wages and weren't going to work. Probably, I'm sure that's what it was.
Shit was political.
Completely out of the blue on this one, but I'm positive that's what it was.
Right, it's political.
Right,
maybe a little bit racial too, but mostly political.
Yeah.
Previous reports regarding Brady's character seemed favorable, though, and he hired black employees in his businesses.
And?
As reported by his great-grandson.
And?
He's like, my great-granddaddy had black folks on his payroll.
He can't be racist. He employed black folks.
Right.
I mean, come on. Upon sunrise, about 5 a.m., train whistle sounded. Some rioters believed that this sound to be a signal for the rioters to launch an all-out assault on Greenwood. White man stepped out from behind the Frisco Depot and was fatally shot by a sniper in Greenwood. Wow. Crowds of rioters poured in from their shelter on foot and by car into the streets of the neighborhood. 5 white men in a car led the charge but were killed by gunfire before they had traveled 1 block.
Jeez.
Overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers, black residents retreated north on Greenwood Avenue to the edge of town.
Dang. Chaos ensued as terrified residents fled. The rioters shot indiscriminately and killed many along the way. Splitting into small groups, they began breaking into houses and buildings. They looted. They arsoned. Several residents later testified the rioters broke into occupied homes and ordered the residents out to the street where they could be driven or forced to walk to detention centers. You can either walk or you can jump in the back of this.
I'll walk. There's a chance I may be able to split through an alley or something.
Right, whatever. A rumor spread among the rioters that the new Mount Zion Baptist Church was being used as a fortress and armory. 20 caskets full of rifles had been delivered to the church, though no evidence was ever found of this. That means it happened.
Maybe.
There's no evidence.
Or the white people are just paranoid and using any excuse they can to do some shit.
Right.
Numerous eyewitnesses described airplanes carrying white assailants who fired rifles and dropped firebombs on buildings, homes, and fleeing families. The privately owned aircraft had been dispatched from the nearby Curtis Southwest field outside of Tulsa. Law enforcement officials later said that the planes were to provide reconnaissance and protect against a Negro uprising.
Wait, so it's okay for a white to
uprise, but Negroes can't?
Negroes can't uprise?
I don't know, dude. But they also said the law enforcement officials confirmed there was planes there to provide reconnaissance and protect against a Negro uprising, so probably throwing firebombs at buildings, homes, and fleeing families, right? Jeez. Law enforcement personnel were thought to be aboard at least some of those flights. I'm sure they were. Eyewitness accounts, such as testimony from the survivors during commission hearings and a manuscript by eyewitness and attorney Buck Colbert Franklin, discovered in 2015, said that on the morning of June 1st, at least a dozen or more planes circled the neighborhood and dropped burning turpentine balls on an office building, a hotel, a filling station, and multiple other buildings. Men also fired rifles at black residents, gunning them down in the street.
Where's the National Guard?
Nowhere, apparently. Protecting the white neighborhoods, remember?
This reminds me of, this is seriously 1850s, 60s, 70s shit right here. It's crazy. I get that feeling because I'm like, oh, they can do whatever they want because the government's so far away and it's going to take a long time to get. No.
America's settled. Right. It's 1921.
No. And then I think, like, oh, shit. There's a freaking National Guard. And
yeah. But, I mean, it's still only the 20s.
Yeah.
So
no alcohol.
Yeah, 1919. That's right. Also, though, another 40 years would go before any of the Voting Right Act and shit would even happen. So
Richard S. Warner concluded in his submission to the Oklahoma Commission that, contrary to later reports by claimed eyewitnesses of seeing explosions, there was no reliable evidence to support such attacks.
Didn't law enforcement clearly? We just said that law enforcement said that they were there for reconnaissance.
All right, and planes were dropping freaking turpentine or whatever.
Well, he says that never happened.
Well, never happened.
But the law enforcement confirms there was planes doing reconnaissance, so that tells me they were probably dropping turpentine balls.
Yeah. Like I said, if they said there's nothing to support that or whatever, that means there is something to support that.
And you never trust a commission on anything anyways, first of all.
Not against eyewitnesses.
No.
Warner noted that while a number of newspapers targeted at black readers heavily reported the use of nitroglycerin, turpentine, and rifles from the planes, many cited anonymous sources or second-hand accounts, though. They're like, man. Beryl Ford, one of the preeminent historians of the disaster, concluded from his large collection of photographs there was no evidence of any building damage by explosions. Danny Goebel commended Warner on his efforts and supported his conclusions.
Who the fuck is Danny Goebel?
We don't know. State Representative Don Ross. He was born in Tulsa in 1941.
Good for him.
He dissented from the evidence presented in the report, concluding that bombs were, in fact, dropped from planes during the violence. And where was this evidence?
Right.
He was like,
from the evidence presented in the report.
He was like, nah.
Okay. In 2015, a previously unknown written eyewitness account of the events of May 31st, 1921 was discovered and subsequently obtained by the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. 10-page typewritten letter was authored by Buck Colbert Franklin, a noted Oklahoma attorney and father of John Hope Franklin. Notable quotes include, "Lurid flames roared and belched and licked their forked tongues in the air." A little dramatic, don't you think? Smoke ascended the sky and thick black volumes amidst all the planes, now a dozen or more in number, still hummed and darted here and there with the agility of natural birds of the air. He said planes circled in midair. They grew in number and hummed and darted and dipped low. I could hear something like hail falling upon the top of my office building. Down East Archer, I saw the old Midway Hotel on fire, burning from its top. And then another and another and another building began to burn from their top. The sidewalks were literally covered with burning turpentine balls. I knew all too well where they came from, and I knew all too well why every burning building first caught fire from the top. He said, I paused and waited for an opportune time to escape. Oh, where is our splendid fire department with its half-dozen stations? 6. I asked myself, is the city in conspiracy with the mob?
Oh.
Not the mob, but the white mob.
Oh, it's the mob.
Franklin reports seeing multiple machine guns firing at night and hearing thousands and thousands of guns being fired simultaneously from all directions. He said that he was arrested by 1,000 boys, it seemed, firing their guns every step they took. Well, at least you were arrested.
Yeah, it was a war zone, bud. They're dropping freaking turpentine balls all day.
You know it.
That's
you know it.
sad shit right there. That was all that was allowed.
Again, I repeat, all this because of some black boy reportedly grabbed some white girl's arm. Grabbed her arm.
Supposedly. And she said it wasn't.
She didn't want to press charges.
Right,
That's all he did was grab her arm. She said it. Which is most likely a little lover's quarrel because she was sucking his balls in the elevator.
And the problem is, the fact is, the parent of that girl was probably so pissed off that that's what it was.
They probably were like, you tell them this. Well,
No, I cannot have people knowing that you're with.
That's what I'm saying. You tell them this. You tell them that this happened. He grabbed you. Don't tell him that you guys were fighting and you tried to grab him and he probably pushed you away to get out of the elevator. That's probably what happened, psycho bitch.
I tried to grab his penis because I was horny. He said I had to go to work. And I was trying to force him to it, and he was like, no, not today, Miss Rowland.
Damn.
Miss, what's her face?
Mrs. Page.
Miss Page. Later. Soraya Page? Damn.
If only there were cameras in the elevator, huh?
Mm-hmm. She was horny that morning waiting for him to come in the elevator, and he was like, no, I got to get up to work.
He's like, I literally got to pee.
Right.
He was like, actually, that's probably what happened.
He's like, stop, Sarah, I got to pee.
Fucking piss. She's like, all right, give me
And
a.
he grabbed her hands like, stop. And he's like, oh, shit. He's like, damn. He was always told growing up, if a white girl ever screams around you, you run.
Get the hell out of there.
No matter what. You listen to me, Roland.
You listen to me, boy.
You listen to me good. You promised me that.
But that's exactly probably what happened. Fuck her, dude.
Yeah.
And fuck this whole thing because it's all over. I don't give a fuck. Even if he did do it forcibly without anything, he grabbed her arm.
All right. General Charles Barrett of the Oklahoma National Guard arrived by special train at about 9:15 a.m.
The next fucking morning.
He had 109 troops from the Oklahoma City.
That's it?
Ordered in by the governor, he could not legally act until he had contacted all the appropriate local authorities.
Why? He has fucking. He's got to have permission from these guys now?
Still got to go to the head place. And
who gives a shit? I'm coming into your town whether you like it or
we're
not. You'll
taking
see us
over.
rolling in. How about that?
It's like the FBI would come in and be like, this is our investigation now.
Yeah, but come on.
Including Mayor T.D. Evans. He showed up as well. The sheriff.
He'd show up. That's who they had to contact.
Right. They had to contact the mayor, T.D. Evans. They had to contact the sheriff and the police chief. Meanwhile, his troops paused to eat breakfast. Well, you do that, we're going to eat this ready-to-eat meals.
Goodness. Meanwhile, one whole neighborhood's in a fucking war zone right now.
They're sitting there like, damn, this place is getting fucked up. Barrett summoned reinforcements from several other Oklahoma cities. Barrett declared martial law at 11:49 a.m., and by noon, the troops had managed to suppress most of the remaining violence. See, it only took
10 minutes.
10 minutes. So stupid.
I know it.
Thousands of black residents had fled the city. Another 4,000 people had been rounded up and detained at various centers. Under martial law, the detainees were required to carry identification cards. As many as 6,000 Greenwood residents were interned at 3 local facilities.
Wow.
Convention Hall, known as Tulsa Theater.
Nowadays.
Right. The Tulsa County Fairgrounds, then located about a mile northeast of Greenwood. And McNulty Park, a baseball stadium at 10th Street and Elgin Avenue.
That's where these guys were all.
Yep, that's where all these guys were
interned
at.
1921 letter from an officer of the service company, 3rd Infantry Oklahoma National Guard, who arrived on May 31st, reported numerous events related to the suppression of the riot.
Oh, okay.
Taking about 30 to 40 black residents into custody. These are his notes. These are his notes. They took about 30 to 40 black residents into custody, putting a machine gun on a truck and taking it on patrol, although it was not functioning and much less useful than an ordinary rifle.
All right.
Just for looks, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Being fired on from black snipers from the church and returning fire.
Oh, shit.
Being fired on by white men.
Oh, yeah.
Turning the prisoners over to deputies to take them to police headquarters. That's probably not good.
All right.
Being fired upon again by armed black residents to having 2 NCOs slightly wounded.
Oh, jeez.
Searching for black snipers and firearms. Detailing an NCO to take 170 black residents to the civil authorities and delivering an additional 150 black residents to the convention hall. Captain John W. McCoon reported that stockpiled ammunition within the burning structures began to explode, which might have further contributed to casualties.
Right.
Martial law was withdrawn on June 4th under Field Order Number 7.
Dang. The massacre was covered by national newspapers.
Of course.
The report number of deaths were widely varied.
Of course.
1st of June, 1921. Tulsa Tribune, they shouldn't even be allowed to do anything anymore because they're idiots.
I know.
Tulsa Tribune reported 9 white people and 68 black people had died in the riot. But shortly afterwards...
Didn't they just say that at the courthouse alone there was
10 whites and 2 blacks. But shortly afterwards, it was changed that the number total was 176 moited.
Between the two,
Right.
apparently.
The next day, the same paper reported the count was 9 white people dead and 21 black people.
Oh, my gosh. That's a day after?
This is CNN. It's Fox News.
It's any news.
The LA Express headline said, 175 killed, many wounded.
Many wounded.
New York Times said 77 people had been killed, including 68 black people, but later lowered the total to 33.
Holy shit. So nobody cares about what these fucking news stations say.
Well, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, Virginia, reported that 85 people, including 25 white people, were murdered.
That could be the most likely account, to be honest.
It also reported that the police chief had reported to Governor Robertson that the total was 75, and that police major put up the figure at 175. The Oklahoma Department of Vital Statistics put the number of deaths at 36, 26 black, 10 white.
Maybe more white people died, though.
Yeah, they're telling me just that
right.
once, and then no white people died after that. Get out of here. Very people, if any, died as a direct result of the fire. Official state records show 5 deaths by conflagration for the entire state in 1921. What was
For the
story?
entire state in 1921. It wasn't just Tulsa, so.
Yeah, only how many?
Only
5?
five,
Dang,
yeah.
that's pretty damn good. People
People not, yeah.
since the beginning of time, everybody knows, stay away from fire.
It's hot. It's hot.
That first guy that died from fire.
Not only died from it, just fucking touched him. He was like, yeah, stay away from that.
They're like, I don't believe you. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, stay away from that.
I don't believe you.
No, there only needed to be 2. One that doubted him initially, and then the second one, everybody was like, oh, yeah, stay away from that. Stay away from that shit.
But how bad is it?
Right. That's probably how it went, too.
Can it actually kill you? Yep.
Threw somebody in there. Yep.
Mark that down. Got a guy marking it down. What can kill you?
I had fired to the list of lions, tigers, people.
Jeez,
Walter Francis White of the NAACP traveled to Tulsa from New York and reported that although officials and undertakers said that the fatalities numbered 10 white and 21 black, he estimated the number of the dead to be 50 whites and between 150 to 200 blacks.
I was thinking that's probably more likely.
He also reported that 10 white men were killed on Tuesday at the courthouse. I'm assuming 6 white men drove into the black section. Yeah, remember the 6 ones that came into and never came out? And 13 whites were killed on Wednesday. He reported that Major O.T. Johnson of the Salvation Army, not a real army, in Tulsa said that 37 blacks were employed as grave diggers to bury 120 blacks in individual graves without coffins on Friday and Saturday.
Wow.
Oklahoma Commission described Johnson's statement being that his crew was over 3 dozen gravediggers who dug about 150 graves.
Dang.
Ground-penetrating radar was used to investigate the sites purported to contain these mass graves.
Yeah, I think it was in the high number itself for both.
Well, initially, 10 at the courthouse, and those 6 kids,
Right.
people that went into the neighborhood and never came out. That's 16. Who knows what the hell, how many died in between?
I'll say, at least 15.
Right.
Multiple eyewitnesses' reports and oral histories suggested the graves could have been dug at 3 different cemeteries across the city. The sites were examined, and no evidence of ground disturbance indicated of mass graves were ever found. However, at one site, the ground disturbance was found in a 5-meter square area. That's enough. But cemetery records indicate that 3 graves had been dug and bodies buried within the envelope before the riot. The commission in 2001 provides multiple contradicting estimates. Goldwell estimates 100 to 300 deaths. Franklin and Ellsworth estimates 75 to 100. And describes
I don't understand. This is 1921. It's not 1865 in the war. Well, how do they not know how many died or not?
And
I don't understand.
And they also describe that some of the higher estimates as dubious as the low estimates. C. Snow was able to confirm at least 39 casualties, all listed in male, although 4 were unidentifiable. 26 were black, 13 were white. Yeah, there's more than that.
No sense, dude. I mean, get out of here. How do you not know? I don't understand how you not know. He says the 13 white fatalities were all taken to hospitals. 11 of them had come from outside of Oklahoma. Oh, wow. Possibly as many as half were petroleum industry workers. Okay, so they were just like, hey, we're on break from the petroleum site. We're going down here to riot. Only 8 of the confirmed 26 black fatalities were brought to hospitals. And as hospitals were segregated, and with the Black Frizzle Memorial Hospital having burned down, the only place where the injured blacks were treated was at the basement of Morningside Hospital.
Yeah.
Several hundred were injured. The Red Cross, in their preliminary overview, mentioned wide-ranging external estimates of 55 to 300. I don't understand how there's such a big discrepancy. This is so stupid. However, because of the hurried nature of undocumented burials, they declined to submit an official estimate, stating the number of dead as a matter of conjecture. How? These people there's a census back then. People were registered and did.
It doesn't.
The Red Cross.
When they say 55 to 300, there's 300.
At least
Right.
250.
Right. You take the highest number. That's what you go with.
But they said like unmarked graves and stuff, undocumented burials. How about the next 3 days? people that were usually roaming around town weren't there, and now you know.
You can mark him off the list.
Right. I mean, holy shit.
He ain't coming over for Thanksgiving. Take his plate off the table.
I tell you, it's just sad.
Jeez.
The Red Cross registered 8,624 persons. 183 people were hospitalized, mostly for gunshot wounds or burns. They are differentiated in their records on the basis of triage category, not the type of wound. Okay. While a further 531 required first aid or surgical treatment, 8 miscarriages were attributed to be a result of the tragedy.
Oh, shit.
19 died in care between June 1st and December 30th, 1921.
It's crazy shit, man. That was a little battle. That was like a little skirmish we have on the Battles of American Civil War going on there, but more detail. The nearly 100,000 people in Greenwood who were affected relied, in large part, on the relief efforts of the Red Cross. Important for the future survival of this district, they worked to create a large-scale plan in order to provide security, food, shelter, job training, and placement, health coverage, and legal support for all of them, the survivors. The Red Cross was working in the aftermath of the tragedy, the victims of which had all the characteristics of prisoners of war. These guys, they're coming home with some stuff. Homeless and helpless.
Obviously.
Abandoned by their home country.
Right.
Confined in specific areas.
Okay.
Denied basic human rights. Treated without respect and deprived of their possessions.
Right.
How do you expect these people to act?
Right.
Less than a year of being in Tulsa, the Red Cross had set up a hospital for black patients, which was the first in Oklahoma's history. Wow. Performed mass vaccinations for illnesses. Performed mass vaccinations for illnesses that had been easily spread in the camps where survivors found themselves.
Right. You got probably, it's 1920s ones. You still had smallpox. Right. You still had measles, mumps, all that shit, dude, that could turn you into the whole spread throughout those camps like crazy.
Right. They also had built infrastructure.
Polio. Wasn't polio still? Like, the polio wasn't eradicated until like the 60s or something, right?
I'm sure that was in there. Right.
Yeah.
Even chickenpox back then.
Right.
They also built infrastructure to provide fresh water, adequate food, and sufficient housing for those who no longer had a place for residence.
Right.
This is the first projects, right?
Kind of, yeah, I guess so.
Because of their work, and then they seen that at work. The government was like,
hey.
Look at this shit, boys. Look what we just stumbled on.
Look at the Red Cross stumbled on.
Holy shit. Because of their work, the Red Cross saved lives of those injured, as well as helped keep thousands of black Tulsans in the city, who they would have otherwise had to leave.
Right.
They're like, nah, man, you guys don't have to go nowhere.
Come for the Red Cross then, huh?
Come to the Red Cross.
The commercial section of Greenwood was destroyed.
Oh, jeez.
Losses include 191 businesses, a junior high school, several churches, and the only hospital in the district. The Red Cross reported that 1,256 houses were burned, and another 215 were looted but not burned. Destroyed nonetheless, though.
Nothing left.
The Tulsa Real Estate Exchange estimated property losses amounted to $1.5 million in real estate and $750 in personal property, equivalent to a total of $34 million in 2021.
$34 million in damage. That's cray.
No, that was property losses.
Right, property loss.
That was the worth of the houses that burned down. Was $34 million worth of houses, dude.
Right.
That's just stupid.
The
Red Cross reported in December 1921, it estimated that 10,000 people were made homeless by the destruction.
Of course.
Wow, dude, that's worse than It's worse than a hurricane coming and wiping out a whole city or a tornado or something. Over the next year, local citizens filed more than 1.8 million, equivalent to $27 million in 2021, in riot-related claims against the city.
Oh, jeez. So basically, what was allowed there by the stupid law enforcement that was there that allowed all this shit to continue to happen.
Ended up costing the city in the long run, didn't it?
It took 11 minutes for
the National Guard to come in and be like, all right, this is enough.
So all that shit ended up killing them, basically.
Yep.
Stupidity. That's the dumbest shit I ever heard in my life.
All these city managers and law enforcement and all the leaders in the city got egg on their face right now, don't they?
Wow. June 3rd. The Morning Tulsa Daily World reported major points of their interview with Deputy Sheriff Barney Cleaver concerning the events leading up to the Tulsa riot.
Okay, what did he have to say?
Cleaver was a deputy sheriff for Ocmulgee County and not under the supervision of the city police department.
Obviously, he's a sheriff.
His duties mainly involved enforcing the law among the colored people in Greenwood. But he also operated a business as a private investigator. Hey. Oh, shit.
So let's private investigate this then.
Nice. He had previously been dismissed as a city police investigator for assisting county officers with a drug raid at Gurley's Hotel, but not reporting his involvement to his superiors.
So why didn't you report your involvement? This guy's sketchy already.
Right. What happened there? Did he get the drugs? He had considerable land holdings and suffered tremendous financial damages as a result of the riot. Oh, jeez. Okay, now we're getting some other kind of stories going on here. They needed something to...
Cleaver...
Among his holdings were several residential properties and Cleaver Hall, a large community gathering place and function hall. He reported personally evicting a number of armed criminals who had taken to barricading themselves within properties he owned. Upon eviction, they merely moved to Cleaver Hall.
So he owns that.
Right. Cleaver reported that the majority of the violence started at Cleaver Hall, along with rioters barricaded inside. Charles Page offered to build him a new home. Oh,
yeah, Charles Page, not related to the girl Page, apparently, from what we can tell. The Morning Tulsa Daily World also stated Cleaver named Will Robinson a dope peddler and all-around bad Negro as the leader of the armed blacks.
It was one bad corn pop.
Corn pop was a bad dude.
One bad dude.
Will Robinson was a bad dude. He also named the names of 3 others who were in the armed gang at the courthouse. The rest of the Negroes participating in the fight, he says, were former servicemen who had exaggerated idea of their own importance. They did not belong here, had no regular employment, and were simply a floating element with seemingly no ambition in life but to foment trouble.
They're saying these guys are just worthless human beings that didn't even deserve
They're coming back from the war. They didn't have nothing.
It's like these guys did nothing with their lives. That's what he's saying. They didn't even belong breathing the same air as we did.
O.W. Gurley, who was owner of Gurley's Hotel, identified the following men by name as arming themselves and gathering in his hotel. Will Robinson, Pegleg Taylor, Bud Bassett, Henry Van Dyke, Chester Ross, Jake Mays, O.B. Mann, John Supplesocks, Fatty.
Bud Bassett just sounds like a 1920s.
Does. Fatty, this apparently guy's name's just Fatty.
So does Peg Taylor.
Jack Scott, Lee Mabel, John Bowman, and W.S. Weaver. So those are all the black guys apparently that took up arms, according to O.W. Gurley.
By June 6th, Associated Press reported that Citizens Public Safety Committee had been established, made up of about 250 white men who vowed to protect the city. The same white men that were involved in the freaking
the riots. They burned out all the houses. Now they're like, we're gonna protect this city.
Oh, wow.
From any more disturbance. He said, mostly because we're tired and hungry and we don't feel like looting no more.
Well, a white man was shot and killed the day after he failed to stop as ordered by a National Guardsman.
Hey, National Guardsmen have that right. You fail to stop, we'll fucking put a bullet in your head, I guess.
Yeah, he's like, didn't you just hear what he said the day before about... I guess that's the way. I mean, you got to take out a few.
Yep. Got to call the herd.
Yeah, you got to let them know who's fucking boss, baby. Governor James B.
That goes against everything we've always said. The National Guard being
right. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I mean, but sometimes
but at the same time, you gotta show the people who's boss, I guess. In situations like this,
you gotta let them know who's really boss. Governor James B. Robertson had gone to Tulsa during the riot to ensure order was restored. Look at that governor.
Like he's going to do it. What is he going to do?
Right, stand in the train. Before returning to the Capitol, he ordered an inquiry of events, especially of the city and sheriff's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially of the city and sheriff's office.
Yeah, what the hell what are these guys doing?
He called for a grand jury to be impaneled, and Judge Valjean Bidison said that the investigation would begin the 8th of June.
Good for them. It's only a couple days
that's
after.
Pretty quick. Right. Don't worry. I'll get on this right now. The jury was selected by the 9th of June. Damn. Judge Bidison expected that the state attorney general would call numerous witnesses.
No shit, you think?
And guess what? They're both going to be black and white.
Right.
He said, since this is a large-scale riot.
Thank you for fucking... Oh, geez. State Attorney General S.P. Freeland initiated the investigation, and witnesses were heard over 12 days. In the end, the all-white jury attributed the riot to the black mobs. Oh, geez, of course. While noting that law enforcement officials had failed in preventing the riot.
Which we've said.
All right. A total of 27 cases were brought before the court, and the jury indicted more than 85 individuals. No one was convicted of charges for the deaths, injuries, or property damage.
Of course they weren't.
Of course they weren't. On June 3rd, a group of over 1,000 businessmen and civic leaders met, resolving to form a committee to raise funds and aid in rebuilding Greenwood. Judge J. Martin, a former mayor of Tulsa, was chosen as the chairman of the group. He said at the mass meeting, Tulsa can only redeem herself from the countrywide shame and humiliation into which she is today plunged by complete restitution and rehabilitation of the destroyed black belt. The rest of the United States must know that the real citizenship of Tulsa weeps at this unspeakable crime and will make good of the damage, so far as it can be done, to last penny. To the last penny, he says. We'll spend every penny we have to rebuild in this neighborhood.
There's some funky stuff going on there. There's some stuff that I'd like to...
Obviously, it was an all-white jury.
There's some other stuff going on behind the scenes.
Obviously, they didn't like black people.
And it wasn't even that either. It was other stuff.
Yeah, they didn't like black people.
It was more.
It was 1921 America.
They didn't like black people. There was more stuff going on.
It was 1921 America. What the hell do you think was going on?
But there's more stuff with the liquor and all that. There's more stuff.
Plus, how many families owned
in Tulsa, Oklahoma,
oil stakes and all that shit?
Tulsa, Oklahoma was very well known to be organized crime galore.
How many, right, that's what I'm saying. How many black families or black people were real estate tycoons and shit in here? You got to figure, this is one of the richest neighborhoods, black neighborhoods in the country.
Right.
So, I mean,
something's going on.
Something could have been happening to conspire to take over their controls and all that shit they owned, you know?
Maybe.
Drive them out of the city. Get them out of here. We'll take over their oil stuff. We'll take over their businesses. We'll take over all that shit. Never know.
I believe that. Many black families spent the winter of 1921 and 1922 in tents as they worked to rebuild. Charles Pace was commended for his efforts in the wake of the riot in assistance of the destitute blacks. A group of influential white developers persuaded the city to pass a fire ordinance that would have prohibited many black people from rebuilding in Greenwood.
What?
Wow.
What the hell is it going to do with the fire ordinance?
Because they didn't want to rebuild, bud. Because they can't rebuild. They got their stuff. I don't know, right? Something's there. The intention was to redevelop Greenwood for more business and industrial use and force black people further to the edge of the city for residence.
What would the fire code prevent them from rebuilding? Is it like you're saying you can't build on this land no more because it's a fire hazard or something? I mean, that's stupid.
They have to tear it down and start over. Well, most places you can easily just repair whatever is, the structure of the place is fine. We can just redo this.
Not if everything's burnt down.
Yeah, a lot of them fire wasn't burnt down to the ground. They can use the bones. and they can
use foundation. Maybe that's about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's weird.
It don't make no sense, right?
No.
Well, their intention was to redevelop Greenwood for more business and industrial use and force black people further to the edge of the city. The case was litigated and appealed and went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court by Buck Colbert Franklin, where the ordinance was ruled unconstitutional.
You think?
Most of the promised funding was never raised for the black residents.
Of course not.
And they struggled to rebuild after the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Willows, the regional director of the Red Cross, noted this in his report, explaining his slow initial progress was to facilitate the rehabilitation of the refugees.
Yeah, you're full of shit.
That's what he has to say to get that.
The fire code was officially intended to prevent another tragedy by banning wooden frame construction houses in place of previously burnt homes.
There it is. If we would have just let it go.
A concession was granted to allow temporary wooden frame dwellings while a new building, which would meet the more restrictive fire code, was being constructed. This was quickly halted as residents within 2 weeks had started to erect full-size wooden frame dwellings in contravention of the agreement. They're like, I don't give a shit. So they're trying to say, obviously, because other materials would be more expensive, so obviously these people probably wouldn't have, a lot of these people wouldn't have the means to rebuild.
Right.
They don't have the money. So they're like, all right, we'll say you can't build out of wood no more. Okay. It took a further 2-month delay to secure the court decision to reinstate the previous fire code. Willows heavily criticized the Tulsa city officials for interfering with his efforts for their role in the Public Welfare Committee, which first sought to rezone the burned area as industrial, and for constructing a Union Station in its place with no consideration for the refugees.
Okay.
Then he criticized them again for the dissolution of the Public Welfare Committee in favor of the formation of the Reconstruction Committee.
Oh, geez.
Which failed to formulate a single plan, leaving the displaced residents prohibited from beginning reconstruction efforts for several months.
There was no plan.
That was their plan to prohibit them from beginning reconstruction.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There was no plan to do any type of rebuilding.
What in the hell is going on in Tulsa?
You don't even know the half of it. Despite the Red Cross's best efforts to assist with the reconstruction of Greenwood's residential area, the considerably altered present-day layout of the district and its surrounding neighborhoods, as well as the extensive redevelopment of Greenwood by people unaffiliated with the neighborhood prior to the riot, stand as proof that the Red Cross relief efforts had limited success.
Yeah.
Tulsa's main industries at the time of the riot were banking, administrative, and petroleum engineering services.
Skelly Oil.
Skelly Oil was the oil, Oklahoma Natural Gas Company, and Penwell were petroleum, and BOK Financial Corporation, they were the banking. Joshua Cosden is also regarded as the founder of the city. Oh, so we got another founder. He constructed the tallest building in Tulsa, the Cosden Building. Got to name after yourself, right? The construction of the Cosden Building and Union Depot was overseen by the Manhattan Construction Company, which was based in Tulsa. Francis Rooney is the great-grandson beneficiary of the estate of Lawrence H. Rooney, founder of the Manhattan Construction Company.
Okay.
All right. So
Let's just throw some random shit in there.
right.
City planners.
I bet he's the one that wrote the Wikipedia page.
Maybe. Probably he had to put himself in
my
there.
time to put myself in. Yeah.
City planners immediately saw the fire that destroyed homes and businesses across Greenwood as a fortunate event for advancing their objectives, obviously. Meanwhile, showing a disregard for the welfare of affected residents. Yeah, because plans were made to rezone the burned area for industrial use. The Tulsa Daily World, here they are at it again, reported that the mayor and the city commissioners expressed that, quote unquote, a large industrial section will be found desirable and causing a wider separation between Negroes and whites. The Reconstruction Committee organized a forum to discuss their proposal with community leaders and stakeholders, naming, among others, O.W. Gurley, Reverend H.T.F. Johnson, and Barney Cleaver as participants in the forum.
Right.
It was reported that all members were in agreement with the plan to redevelop the burned district as an industrial section and agreed that the proposed Union Station project was desirable. Not a note of dissension was expressed. The article states that these community leaders would again meet at the First Baptist Church in the following days. Good for them. So all these, that's what alludes to. It was a plan to burn down the whole neighborhood so they could do their industrial shit, dude.
Obviously.
Stupid.
I'm telling you, there's more behind it. Something was going
Well, we just seen what was behind it.
right there. They needed something.
Yeah.
And the scream of a little white girl in a elevator with a black lover.
Which probably would have been nothing. And then these
Nothing.
guys conjured a plan of like, this could be what we need here, guys. This could be what we need. And all hell broke loose. Wow.
That's all they needed. Isn't that sad? That's all it took for them to jump over edge.
Little arm grab.
Was a little arm grab and scream from a little white girl. Well, the Black Dispatch describes the content of the following meetings at the First Baptist Church. The Reconstruction Committee had intended to have the black landholders sign over their property to a holding company managed by black representatives on behalf of the city. Jeez. The properties were to be turned over to a white appraisal committee. Of course, there it is.
There we
Wait
go.
for it. Which would pay residents for the residentially zoned land at the lower industrial value in advance of the rezoning.
That's so dumb. So instead of paying them what their house is actually worth, they're going to pay it for residential or industrial prices.
Right.
That's fucked.
A lot cheaper.
Wow.
Professor J.W. Hughes addressed the white Reconstruction Committee members in opposition to their proposition.
Yeah.
Coining a slogan which would come to galvanize the community. He says, quote, "I'm going to hold what I have until I get what I've lost."
Good for you, JW.
Right. I don't know if anybody backed them.
Good for you. I'm sure. Said it galvanized community. So, well, construction of the Tulsa Union Depot, a large central rail hub connecting three major railroads, began in Greenwood less than 2 years after the riot.
Okay.
Prior to the riot, construction had already been underway for a smaller rail hub nearby.
Oh, they want a bigger one. Though.
However, in the aftermath of the riot, land on which homes and businesses had been destroyed by fire suddenly became available,
Oh, I told you there was something going on here, man.
allowing for a larger train depot near the heart of the city to be built in Greenwood instead.
I knew it. There it is. I was just waiting for that.
Right.
Just a little bit of information there. In the words of Police Chief Chuck Jordan about the Tulsa Police Department, they did not do their job then. You know, they just didn't.
They just didn't.
Parrish, an African-American citizen of Tulsa, summarized lawlessness in Oklahoma as a contributing factor in 1922 as, quote, "If it were not for the profitable alliance of politics and vice or professional crime, the tiny spark which is the beginning of all these outrages would be promptly extinguished,"
Okay.
which was true. Clark, a prominent Oklahoma historian and a law professor, completed his doctoral dissertation in law on the subject of lawlessness in Oklahoma, specifically on this period of time and how lawlessness had led to the rise of the second KKK.
Second coming of the KKK.
You think it was worse, the first one or the second one?
Probably the first one.
Right. And he said, in order to illustrate the need for effective law enforcement and a functional judiciary.
Okay, thank you, Clark. Chief of Police John A. Gustafson was the subject of an investigation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Official proceedings began on June 6, 1921. He was prosecuted on multiple counts, refusing to enforce prohibition. Refusing to enforce anti-prostitution laws.
Oh, geez.
Operating a stolen automobile laundering racket. Jeez. And allowing known automobile thieves to escape justice for the purpose of extorting the citizens of Tulsa for rewards relating to their return, repurposing vehicles for his own use or sale, operating a fake detective agency for the purpose of billing the city of Tulsa for investigative duties he was already being paid for as police chief.
Oh, no.
Failing to enforce gun laws, and failure to take action during the riot.
Holy shit. Dude, it's all coming to light. Told you this is an inside freaking job from the get-go.
Money laundering and everything. Holy shit.
This guy's a freaking...
Jeez, the Attorney General of Oklahoma received numerous letters alleging members of the police force had conspired with members of the justice system to threaten witnesses in corruption trials stemming from the grand jury investigations as well. So you got the police chief's got his little guys out there harassing everybody.
No.
Wow, dude. Tulsa, what is happening?
It's Tulsa, man. There's some crazy stuff going on. We can do a whole series on Tulsa. In the letters, various members of the public requested the presence of the state attorney general at the trial. An assistant of the attorney general replied to one such letter by stating that their budget was too stretched to respond and recommending instead that the citizens of Tulsa simply vote for new officers.
Well, that's not how new officers work.
Gustafson was found to have a long history of fraud predating his membership. How did they not know this? Predating his membership of the Tulsa Police Department. His previous partner in his detective agency, Phil Kirk, had been convicted of blackmail. Gustafson, fake detective agency, ran up high billings on the police account. Investigators know that many blackmail letters had been sent to members of the community from the agency. Oh, geez. One particularly disturbing case involved the frequent rape by her father of an 11-year-old girl who had been since become pregnant.
Wow.
Instead of prosecuting, they sent a blackhand letter on July 30th, 1921.
Extortion letter, pretty much.
Right? On the 30th of July, 1921, out of 5 counts of indictment, Gustafson was found guilty of 2 counts. Negligence for failing to stop the riot, which resulted in dismissal from police force, obviously, and conspiracy for freeing automobile thieves and collecting rewards, which resulted in a jail sentence.
Good for him.
Yeah, it was probably like a month.
Good. Well, whatever. Off the police force now.
All right.
3 days after the massacre.
Does he still get his pension and all that?
I doubt it. Maybe. Who knows? Corrupt this shit is. Who knows? 3 days after the massacre, President Warren G. Harding spoke at the all-black Lincoln University in Pennsylvania.
Fantastic.
He declared, despite the demagogues, the idea of our oneness as Americans has risen superior to ever appeal to mere class and group. And so, I wish it might be in this matter of our national problem of races.
Oh, good for him.
Okay, speaking directly about the events in Tulsa, he said, God grant that in the soberness, the fairness, and the justice of this country, we never see another spectacle like it. Well,
wait
a couple more years.
Right.
I mean, which one do you want to do?
Right.
There were no convictions for any of the charges related to violence.
Oh.
There were decades of silence about the terror, violence, and losses of this event. Yeah. The riot was largely omitted from local, state, and national histories.
Of course it was.
The Tulsa Race Riot of 1921 was rarely mentioned in history books, classrooms, or even in private.
Oh, I don't think I ever learned it.
No, black and white people alike grew into middle age unaware of what had taken place.
You ain't kidding.
It was not recognized in the Tulsa Tribune feature of 15 years ago today or 25 years ago today.
Oh.
A 2007, right. They were reporting heavily on it when it was happening, though.
Come on.
A 2017 report detailing the history of the Tulsa Fire Department from 1897 until the date of publication makes no mention of the 1921 massacre. Dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's one of their
Also was like, dude, we're throwing this out.
Right. Like, man, we just got a major sports team.
Well, maybe that's why nobody knew about it, obviously. Maybe people weren't just as stupid as I thought they were.
Several people tried to document the events, gather photographs, and record the names of the dead and injured. Mary E. Jones Parrish, a young black teacher and journalist from Rochester, New York, was hired by the Interracial Commission to write an account of the riot. Parrish was a survivor of the riot, and she wrote about her experiences, collected other accounts, gathered photographs, and compiled a partial roster of property losses in the African-American community. That's cool. She published these in the events of the Tulsa disaster in 1922. So where's that paper at nowadays? It was the first book to be published about the riot.
Right.
The first academic account was a master's thesis written in 1946 by Lauren L. Gill, a veteran of World War II. But the thesis did not circulate beyond the University of Tulsa.
Wow, of course not. They were like, this ain't getting out. Locked in the dean's desk.
Mm-hmm.
In 1971, a small group of survivors gathered for a memorial service at Mount Zion Baptist Church.
50 years later.
Yeah, with black and white people in attendance. That same year, the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce decided to commemorate the riot, but when they read the accounts and saw photos gathered by Ed Wheeler, host of a radio history program, which detailed the specifics of the riot. They refused to publish them.
Oh my!
Dude,
Come on,
just own up to your shit.
You
Dude.
can't
50
run
years
away
later now.
Right, you can't run away from history, boys.
He then took this information to 2 major newspapers in Tulsa, both of which refused to run the story.
Okay, I bet they call him and be like, "Hey, you get these stories. You better not run these mofo's."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
His article, Profile of a Race Riot, was published in Impact magazine, a publication aimed at black audiences, but most of Tulsa's white residents never knew about it. Early 70s, along with Henry C. Whitlow, Jr., a history teacher at Booker T. Washington High School, Mozella Franklin Jones helped to desegregate the Tulsa Historical Society by mounting the first major exhibition on the history of African Americans in Tulsa. Jones also created at the Tulsa Historical Society the first collection of massacre photographs available to the public. Wow, so probably the burning bodies and wow. While researching and sharing the history of the riot, Jones collaborated with a white woman named Ruth Sigler Avery, who was also trying to publicize accounts of the riot. The 2 women, however, encountered pressure, particularly among whites, to keep silent.
Okay. We knew that was going to happen.
Jeez, dude, right.
Jeez, oh, Pete.
That's 70 years or 50 years after the fact. I mean, holy shit.
The Tulsa Massacre claimed an estimated 150-300 lives. Over 800 people were seriously injured. Many more are estimated to have had their lives just drastically changed forever.
Sure, right.
I'd say all 72,000.
Right. Well, I don't know, maybe.
Tulsa Jewish community helped save African Americans during the riot, which is odd.
Oh, don't tell Kanye that.
Right. Olivia Hooker was born on the 12th of February, 1915 in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Her family was one of the many families affected by the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 when she was only 6 years old. Her family's home in Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was broken into by a group of white men with torches and was torn apart. Many of her family's belongings were destroyed. One item that Hooker recalled was her sister's piano.
Oh.
She remembered hearing a group of white men whacking into the piano as she and her 4 other siblings hid under the dining room table, which their mother covered with a tablecloth. Her father owned a store in Tulsa, which she recalled was absolutely destroyed, and only one safe was left standing.
At least the safe was there.
Right.
One, at least the only reason it was left standing was that it was too big and heavy to be destroyed or stolen.
Okay.
Well, that's your advice then. Get big, heavy safes.
That's what they do nowadays.
Hooker also remembered vividly her schoolhouse being destroyed and blown up with dynamite.
Wow.
Didn't mention that before. After the massacre, Hooker and her family moved to Topeka, Kansas to rebuild their lives. This is by Hooker recalled her mother telling her, "Don't spend your time agonizing over the past."
Right. Ain't no sense, right?
With a new fresh start in Topeka, Hooker was the first African-American woman to join the Coast Guard in February of 1945.
Look at that. Great.
After leaving the Coast Guard, Hooker went on to earn her master's degree in psychology from Teachers College and Columbia University.
Fantastic.
She earned her doctorate in clinical psychology at the University of Rochester.
Look at her. She ended up going all over the freaking United States.
Hooker went on to have multiple jobs with a degree in psychology, mostly based on her work on the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. She retired from work at the age of 87 and died good life at 103 on November 21st, 2018, peacefully in her home in New York.
Look at that shit.
Look at fucking
Fantastic.
Hooker, dude.
See, man, you don't have to dwell on the past. Just look at Hooker.
Right.
Eldoris McCondici was born on the 1st of September, 1911 in Tyler, Texas. She was 4 years old when she and her family moved to Tulsa in the Greenwood district. Her family was part of the working class. Her father had worked in a field and her mother did housework. 31st of May, 1921. Condici was 9 years old. She remembered being frantically awakened by her mother. She remembered her mother saying, "The white people are killing the colored people." McCondici and her family evacuated their Tulsa home to find refuge up north from the massacre. McCondici described how airplanes were raining down bullets.
There's the airplanes.
There's the turpentine balls, and how no one had enough time to even put clothes on and evacuate their homes safely. She recalled seeing women walking on the railroad track with no shoes in their nightgowns. She remembered finding shelter in a chicken coop during the riots to protect herself from machine gun fire. Jeez. After McCondici and her family evacuated Tulsa, they found refuge in a farmer's home overnight.
Well, they then traveled to Pawhuska, Oklahoma, where they stayed for about 2 or 3 days until they knew it was safe to return home.
Was it, though?
Upon returning to Tulsa, Eldoris described what was left of the Greenwood district as war-torn.
I bet, dude.
She recalled many businesses and homes were burnt to the ground.
Jeez.
Her family slowly rebuilt their lives in Tulsa and never left, referring to it as their forever home.
Hey, this is not going to sway us, boys.
She was married to Arthur McCondici for 67 years and had 4 children. 2 sons, 2 daughters. She died on September 12th, 2010, several days after celebrating her 99th birthday.
Wow.
Her final resting place is in the Crown Hill Cemetery in Tulsa.
The Lord let these guys live long lives after that tragedy.
Go on and tell people about the shit.
Right. George Monroe was 5 years old during the attack on Greenwood. He claimed some images could never leave his mind. He remembered seeing people getting shot and his own curtains being set on fire by a mob of white men. He also recalled hiding under a bed with his older sister when a rioter stepped on his finger, causing his sister to throw her hand over his mouth to prevent him from screaming. Ooh, or hearing the screams.
All right.
George Monroe lived out the rest of his life in Tulsa. He became a musician, owner of a Tulsa nightclub, and the first black man in Tulsa to sell Coca-Cola.
Hey,
fantastic.
Look at you, Georgie.
Yeah, well, George Monroe died in 2001.
Hey,
he was, does it say?
He was 5 in 1921, so
what?
31, 41,
80
51, 61, 71, 81, 91, 01. He would have been 85. Yeah. Wow, Coca-Cola, first one to sell it. Good for him. Well, meanwhile, Mary Elizabeth Jones Parrish, who lived from 1892 to 1972,
respectfully,
was born in 1892 in Yazoo City, Mississippi.
80 years old.
She moved to Tulsa around 1919 and worked teaching typing and shorthand at a branch of the YMCA. Parrish was reading in her home when the Tulsa Race Massacre began on the evening of May 31st. Parrish's daughter, Florence Mary, and we remember her, called the young journalist and teacher to the window. "Mother," she said, "I see men with guns." The two eventually fled into the night under a hail of bullets.
Jeez.
Mary Parrish wrote a first-person account and collected eyewitness statements from dozens of others and published them immediately following the tragedy under the title, The Events of the Tulsa Disaster. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Parrish documented the magnitude of the loss of human life and property at the hands of white vigilantes.
Right.
Parrish hoped that her book would open the eyes of the thinking people to the impending danger of letting such conditions exist in the quote-unquote land of the free and the home of the brave.
She's right.
Well,
this little town of Tulsa was being run by multiple freaking corrupts.
Guess what? Didn't open their eyes.
No.
Not at least then, anyways.
Wow. Crazy shit going on here. A new edition was published in 2021 by Trinity University Press under the title, The Nation Must Awake. My Witness to the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921.
Well, good for him.
The new edition includes a new afterword by Annalise M. Bruner, Parrish's great-granddaughter. The New York Times recalled Parrish's A Story of Survival remains relevant to a century later.
Yeah.
While the New Yorker called it the first and most visceral, long-form account of how Greenwood residents experienced the massacre. So this is like first-hand shit. You won't hear this anywhere else.
Right. Well, Leslie Benningfield, also known as Mother Rando, was born in Morris, Oklahoma, November 10th, 1914. Her parents were farmers. She had 3 sisters and a brother.
Oh.
Benningfield does not recall much due to her young age during the massacre. She'd have been 7.
Right.
Older than the one dude that
he was 5.
Yeah. She said she doesn't remember much. She remembers a mob of white men barging into her home and then destroyed her family's house. She has memories of feelings of intense fear while trying to evacuate her home and get somewhere safe. She spent the rest of her childhood and young adulthood in Tulsa and graduated from Booker T. Washington High School.
Fantastic.
She is now a part of an active lawsuit with Greenwood Advocates, which is a team of human and civil rights lawyers fighting for justice for victims and their families. Benningfield claims she still has nightmares of seeing the piles of dead bodies she saw during the massacre. She don't remember much, though, right? For her 106th birthday that took place in 2020, still alive. Look at her. The community raised thousands of dollars for her to remodel her home. Good for her. Since then, she has been interviewed several times and remained in the public eye during the 2021 centennial anniversary of the massacre at the age of 107. Still alive.
Maybe.
Well, clearly, what is that? She died.
Wow. Look at this chick.
Yeah.
The one that lived the longest don't remember shit.
Don't remember nothing, right?
Well, Hal Singer was born on the 8th of October, 1919. So he was only 2 years old when all this happened. To 2 working-class parents. His mother worked in a wealthy white residence home as a cook. His father worked producing oil rigging tools. Well, we all knew they were in part of the oil business.
Right.
Singer was 18 months old when the Tulsa Race Massacre took place. A white woman for whom his mother worked put his family on a train to Kansas City during the massacre so the Singer family would be safe.
Wow.
Up to the day of his passing, Singer recalled how forever grateful he was for this woman's kindness.
She's like, y'all better come back, though. I need my house clean.
This mess will be here when you get back. Don't worry. When his family returned to their home, it was burnt to the ground.
Yeah.
They had to rebuild their whole lives again from scratch. However, they stayed in the Tulsa in the Greenwood district all through his childhood. As a young boy, Singer hung out by the rail tracks and invited jazz bands to come over and have some of his mother's cooking.
Good for him.
This helped him in the long run as he became an iconic saxophonist of his generation.
Oh, really?
Really? Let's check that out.
Uh-huh.
Singer went on to play with the likes of Duke Ellington, Ray Charles, and Billie Holiday. Look at that shit. He was married for over 50 years to his wife, Arlette Singer. 18th of August, 2020. Just months before his 101st birthday, he died in Chateau, however you say, but in Paris, actually.
Oh,
Damn, he went to Paris.
Right. Look at all these survivors, though. Surviving to like 90 and 100, dude.
Right, and doing good lives.
Right.
Good for them.
Well, she was 90. Essie Johnson lived till 2006, was born in 1916. Was 5 when the massacre took place. Her family evacuated their home in the early hours of May 31st.
And they knew what was coming out. Well, it's a day in, right? Happened on the 30th.
Well, the night of.
Right.
She remembers her parents making her and her siblings stay away from the windows because there were active shooters targeting windows of homes.
So Pete.
She describes the feelings of fright and confusion. Her family had to evacuate their homes since almost all homes were brain burnt to the ground.
Jeez.
Her mother took her and her 4 siblings and started running to find shelter elsewhere. She recalls watching airplanes above her dropping bombs onto the roof of houses, causing them to catch on fire.
Of course.
Her mother
they said that was fake.
Right. Her mother was trying to get her and her siblings to Golden Gate Park. Okay. Beck's father stayed behind to help as much as possible and assist injured people. She recalls that once they got to Golden Gate Park, they hid behind trees. Essie and her family soon after that found shelter in churches and school basements for their remaining days.
All right.
Once they were cleared to go back, their home was burnt to the ground.
Oh, man.
She recalls having to live in a tent on the dirt, waiting for their house to be rebuilt. She describes the whole experience to be awful.
That. Jeez, OP. Well, Vernice Sims was 17 years old when the massacre took place. She lived in the Greenwood district with her family as she attended Booker T. Washington High School. She was preparing for her prom.
Oh.
Sims remembered vividly being in her backyard when bullets started raining down and everyone was cautioned to get in the house as quickly as possible. As the riots and massacre progressed, Sims and her family found refuge at a white family's home where they were safe from the massacre, of course, right? When they returned to their Greenwood home, just like all the others, it was burnt to the ground. Sims and her family had to live in a tent. She recalls Booker T. Washington High School being turned into a hospital for the wounded. Sims volunteered at the hospital where she fed and gave water to people who were injured during the massacre. While her house was being rebuilt by her father, she finished high school in Oklahoma City. Afterwards, Sims studied at Langston University. After she graduated from the university, she came home to see her house finally rebuilt. She ain't did that.
Right.
She recalls never getting any money from insurance or the government to help.
Damn, they rebuilt on their own dime, huh?
Sims described the events as devastating and scary.
Sure it was. Well, another one, Eloise Taylor was 19 years old and lived in Greenwood when the massacre took place, obviously. She was the daughter of the famed Horace Greeley Beecher Taylor, better known as Peg Leg Taylor.
Oh, Peg Leg.
Yeah. According to Taylor's great-granddaughter, who had passed on Eloise's story, she witnessed some of the very first gunfight in the massacre. She was the one that said that by the stores before the courthouse, wasn't it?
Right.
She recounts how Peg Leg Taylor fought his way to Eloise and helped her escape in the woods north of the city.
Damn right.
Where they then laid and hid while white rioters continued to hunt down and kill other survivors around them.
Damn.
They found some of the people that were out there in the woods laying on their stomach. Lord help these people. And they just shot them, she says, right there on the ground where they laid. I'm talking about kids, women. They didn't care. Old people, people who had breastfed them. They didn't give a damn. They killed them right there on the ground.
Eloise was reportedly so terrified that when finally her daddy told her to get up and come on, she said in order for them to move, he had to hurt her. Oh, dang. He was like whooping her.
Right, yeah.
She said he had to hurt her to make her stand up. Eloise and her father then walked several miles to a nearby town where they got help, got warm, got clothes, got food, and moved on. And where they also decided that they would never, ever talk about this again. Eloise finally opened up to her great-granddaughters about her experience in 1997, a few short years before she died in 2000 at the age of 98.
Damn, dude, imagine not talking about it for that long. 1996, as the riot's 75th anniversary neared, the state legislature authorized an Oklahoma commission to investigate the Tulsa Race Riot by appointing individuals to study and prepare a report detailing an historical account of the riot. Authorization of the study enjoyed strong support from members of both political parties and all political persuasions.
Enjoyed.
Okay. We enjoyed this. The commission had originally been called the Tulsa Race Riot Commission, but in November 2018, the name was changed to Tulsa Race Massacre.
Of course, they had to make it more, get the hell out of here.
The commission conducted interviews and heard testimony in order to thoroughly document the causes and damage. A little late.
Right. Too late. The commission delivered its final report on February 21st, 2001. The report recommended actions for substantial restitution to the black residents, listed below in order of priority. Number 1, direct payment of reparations to survivors of the 1921 race riot, survivors, great. Direct payment of reparations to descendants of the survivors. Number 3, a scholarship fund available to students affected by the race riot.
Okay.
Why? Tell me 90 years old, you're going to go to college?
Obviously for kids of the descendants.
Number 4, establishment of an economic development enterprise zone in the historic area of the Greenwood district.
Okay.
And number 5, a memorial for the reburial of the remains of the victims of Tulsa Race Riot.
Okay. Understandably, I get it all.
I'll take it.
The Tulsa Race Massacre Commission arranged for archaeological non-invasive ground surveys of New Block Park, Oak Lawn Cemetery, and Booker T. Washington Cemetery, which were identified as possible location for mass graves. Didn't we say that where they didn't find nothing?
Right.
Oral histories, other sources, and timing suggested the whites would have buried the blacks at the first 2 locations. Black people were said to have buried black victims at the 3rd location after the riot was over.
Right. Yeah, they did a mass.
Right. The people who were buried at Washington Cemetery, which is reserved for black people, were probably thought to be those victims who had died of their wounds after the riot had ended, since it was the most distant suspected burial location from downtown.
Right.
Investigations of 3 potential mass grave sites performed in 97 and 98. Even though the total area of all 3 of these locations could not be surveyed, preliminary data suggested that they contained no mass graves, like we said earlier.
Okay. 1999, an eyewitness who had seen whites burying black victims at Oak Lawn Cemetery was found.
Okay.
A team investigated a potential area with more equipment. In the end, searches for mass graves were made with the aid of technology, which included ground-penetrating radar, followed by core sampling. The expert's report, presented to the commission in December 2000, could not substantiate claims of mass graves in Oak Lawn Cemetery or Washington Cemetery or New Block Park.
Well, of course not. Why? Where would they have been buried?
Right. I mean, they got to be somewhere.
Right.
A promising spot in Washington Cemetery had turned out to be a layer of clay, and then another promising spot in New Block Park had turned out to be an old basement.
Jeez.
The suggestion that the bodies had been burned in the city incinerator was also considered unfeasible and discounted, given the incinerator's capacity and logistical considerations.
Right.
Okay.
So you'd have to spend weeks burning 80 bodies or 100, however money there were.
And it'd be too hot. It was just burn the whole thing down anyway. In preparation for the 100th anniversary of the massacre, state archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar probed Oak Lawn Cemetery for long-rumored mass graves again.
I don't think they found anything. Meanwhile, Mayor G.T. Bynum calls it a murder investigation when they were looking for these. After input from the public, officials from the Oklahoma Archaeological Survey used 3 subsurface scanning techniques to survey New Block Park, Oak Lawn, and an area known as the Canes along the Arkansas River. Right. Oklahoma Archaeological Survey subsequently announced that they were discontinuing search efforts at New Block Park after not finding any evidence. December 17th, 2019, the team of forensic archaeologists announced that they had found anomalies which are consistent with that of human dug pits beneath the ground at Oak Lawn and the ground where the Interstate 244 bridge crosses the Arkansas River.
Oh, okay.
They announced that the anomalies are likely candidates for mass graves, but further radar surveys and physical excavations of the sites are needed.
Of course they are.
As in 2019.
Right.
Researchers secured permission to perform limited excavations from the city. Why would they just be like, hey, dig the fucking thing up?
Right.
As a result, they will be able to determine what the contents of these sites are beginning in April 2020. While they do not expect to dig up any human remains, they asserted that if they find any, they will treat them with the proper respect. Okay.
Well, an initial dig at the suspected area, Oak Lawn, in July 2020 found 0 human remains. October 21st, 2020.
Wait, they're in a cemetery. How is there no remains at all?
Right. A forensic team said that it had unearthed 11 coffins in the Oak Lawn Cemetery.
Oh.
Records and research suggested that as many as 18 victims would be found. The forensic team will need to do more work in order to determine if the coffins contain remains of massacre victims.
But if they're mass graves, why would they put them in coffins?
Right, I don't know about that. As stated by Carrie Stackelbeck, a state archaeologist, the remains will not be moved until they can be properly exhumed because their deterioration needs to be prevented. Right. She also stated that the site where the remains were discovered constitutes as a mass grave. We have a high degree of confidence that this is one of the locations we were looking for. Okay. But we have to remain cautious, she says, because we have not done anything to expose the human remains beyond those that have been encountered.
Okay. Team planned to exhume the remains of June of 2021. Forensic anthropologist Phoebe Stubblefield later planned to analyze the remains in order to determine if they are the remains of people who were killed in the massacre.
Okay.
June of 2021, after scientists resumed work at the site, 35 coffins were recovered from the mass grave.
Maybe they put them. Maybe they're just like little
The wood boxes, maybe.
Yeah, makeshift.
The remains of 19 people were taken to an on-site science lab. Officials stated that they have completed preliminary analysis of 9 of those human remains.
Okay. As of March 2001, each of the 118 known survivors of the riot still alive at the time, the youngest of whom was 85, was given a gold-plated medal bearing the state seal. Ooh, look at that shit. Gold-plated. Ooh, they couldn't even give him a real gold medal.
Right.
Jeez.
Worth nothing.
Right. The Tulsa Reparations Coalition, sponsored by the Center for Racial Justice Incorporation, was formed on April 7, 2001, to obtain restitution for damages suffered by Tulsa's black community, as recommended by the Oklahoma Commission. Tulsa Mayor Kathy Taylor held a celebration of conscience, at which she apologized to survivors and gave medals to those who could be located.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. That's so dumb.
That's so stupid.
The politicians are so fucking ignorant,
retarded.
dude.
They think they're doing something.
I know.
Great
Oh, look at
job,
me. Shut the fuck up. June 1st, 2001, Governor Frank Keating signed the 1921 Tulsa Race Riot Reconciliation Act into law. The act acknowledged that the event occurred but failed to deliver any substantial reparations to the victims.
Of course it did.
In spite of the commission's recommendation for reparations in their report on the riot, the Oklahoma State Legislature did not agree that reparations were appropriate, and thus did not include them in the Reconciliation Act. The act provided for the following, though: more than 300 college scholarships for descendants of Greenwood residents, creation of a memorial to those who died, a park with statues was dedicated as John Hope Franklin Reconciliation Park. October 7th, or 27th, 2010, named in honor of the notable African-American historian from Tulsa. Didn't have no part of the riot, but whatever, or the massacre, and economic development in Greenwood. Dude, idiots.
Wow.
Idiots.
I mean, to even do anything like that, it'd have to be worth, some people can be like, oh, I don't know who's praising that. Who would, besides idiots there? And even then, they know this is a freaking joke. To hopefully, just
we'll give you guys a memorial,
right? Hopefully, just to shut some people up, right? Mm. 5 survivors, represented by a legal team that included Johnny Cock and Charles Ogletree, filed suit against the city of Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma, and they filed this in February 2003, based on the findings of a 2001 report. Ogletree said that the state and the city should compensate the victims and their families to honor their admitted obligations as detailed in the commission's report.
Right.
The federal district and appellate courts dismissed the suit on the grounds that a recommendation was not an admitted obligation. Oh, what a piece of shit. And, well, I guess you got to go by law, right? And noting that the statute of limitations has exceeded on the 80-year-old case. The state requires that civil rights cases be filed within 2 years.
Oh, get out of here, dude.
Wow.
What, coming from a whole damn state that tried to bury it and act like it never happened.
Right. Oh, my. For that reason, the court did not rule on the issues. The Supreme Court of the United States declined to hear the appeal.
April 2007, Ogletree appealed to the U.S. Congress to pass a bill extending the statute of limitations for the case, giving the state and cities accountability for the destruction and the long suppression of material about it. Right. The bill was introduced by John Conyers of Michigan, and heard by the Judiciary Committee of the House, but it did not pass because of concerns about ex post facto legislation.
I mean, they're going about it.
You do this,
loopholes, man.
You do that, but then how many other things you have to?
All right, that's what they're saying.
Extend. Mm-hmm. Conyers reintroduced the bill in 2009 as the John Hope Franklin Tulsa Greenwood Race Riot Claims Accountability Act of 2009,
and again in
2012 he did it again. And obviously,
so he's like, all right, let's make this a bill that's exactly about this then.
Right.
A park was developed in 2010 in Greenwood area as a memorial to victims of the riot.
90 years later, dude. It's just
October 2010, the park was named for noted historian John Hope Franklin. Why? Who was born and raised in Tulsa.
Right.
He became known as a historian of the South. The park includes 3 statues of figures by sculptor Ed Dwight.
Cool.
Representing hostility, humiliation, and hope. An extensive curriculum on the event was provided to Oklahoma school districts in 2020. Finally.
I bet, right?
In only Oklahoma, though. It should be United States history, boys.
Well, yeah.
May 29th, 2020. The eve of the 99th.
Think about it. How many race riots at all did you learn about?
Not very many.
None. Not even none in Michigan.
We did the Detroit one.
I don't think so.
I remember.
I don't.
No, maybe not. 29th of May, 2020. The eve of the 99th anniversary. and onset of the George Floyd. Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
And the onset of the George Floyd protest, Human Rights Watch released a report titled "The Case for Reparations in Tulsa: A Human Rights Argument," demanding reparations for survivors and descendants of the violence because the economic impact of the massacre is still visible, as illustrated by the high poverty rates and lower life expectancy in northern Tulsa.
Maybe they got a point there, huh? Separate documentary projects were also announced at the time with plans to release them on the 100th anniversary. September 2020, a 105-year-old survivor of the massacre filed a lawsuit against the city for reparations caused by damages to the city's black businesses. 2021, Oklahoma librarians were finally able to get the Library of Congress to change the official subject headings, which place limits on the terms which people are allowed to use whenever they conduct searches. For some of the information for the event from riot to massacre. Okay.
I don't think it was a massacre, though, because both got murdered.
Well, Martian. If the one girl was right, they were just killing people lying on the ground, women and kids.
There was 100 and so and 50, about 40 whites were killed.
Maybe. May 19th, 2021, a 107-year-old survivor, Viola Fletcher, on her 100
these.
I know.
Man.
Her 100-year-old brother, Hughes Van Ellis, and a 106-year-old survivor, Leslie Benningfield Randall, testified about their experiences during the massacre and the reparations lawsuit before a House Judiciary Subcommittee. Testimony coincides with the pending resolutions for the U.S. House and Senate, which propose federal recognition of the centennial of the massacre on May 31st and June 1st.
Fuck it. Give them their money, man.
Yeah.
Give the family their money, buds. You guys tried hiding it. It would be different. It was different if you guys would have took care of it right from the get-go. Help them rebuild their homes. Make sure they had jobs.
I tried to turn their shit into a train depot.
Right. Make sure they had jobs, rebuild their homes, and all that good shit. But now you sent you to do that, and then you try to hide it from everything
for 100 years, damn near.
Stupid. They deserve $926 million like freaking Alec Jones has to pay.
We'll see they're pushing for 2.7 trillion.
More money than what World War II costed. Right. June 1st, 2021. It's 100 years since the Tulsa Massacre. President Joe Biden,
former President
Joe Biden visited the area. The first
race massacre.
Right. The first appointed president to do so. And during his visit, he made a speech in which he stated, "Some injustices are so heinous."
Do you think it's just because it's the 100th anniversary? It would have been any president.
Right.
I think.
Right. "Some injustices are so heinous, so horrific, so grievous, they cannot be buried, no matter how hard."
Hey, you were dead on Joe Biden. Dude.
Yeah, no matter how hard people try. And then he went off to get ice cream. Right. Biden toured the Greenwood Cultural Center and met with survivors Viola Fletcher, Hughes Van Ellis, and Leslie Benningfield Randall, where he said, "I do not work for you."
Good for them. Tulsa Historical Society Museum offer a virtual exhibit of the Tulsa Race Massacre that is open all times during the day, free of charge. It's an online exhibit, offers many photos, audios, documents, and resources that cannot be found anywhere else, though.
Nice.
Also offers a traveling exhibit consisting of 4 panels regarding the Tulsa Race Massacre that are allowed to travel to locations within the Tulsa metropolitan area. The main goal of the panels is to educate the community, obviously.
Black Wall Street can still be found today under the historical Greenwood district in Tulsa. After the Tulsa Race Massacre in 1921, it took about 10 years to rebuild this district. The historical Vernon AME Church is the only building standing today, which is a part of the last remaining structure of 1921. The residents of Greenwood District tried to keep the memory of Tulsa Race Massacre prominent within the community. Today, many memorials stand out of respect for the memory of what was once Black Wall Street. Many investigations are still underway in the hope that more unmarked graves can be found, and in the hope that more victims of the massacre can be identified.
It's just crazy to me that they couldn't identify all these people. Like, where the hell?
They're not trying.
Where are they? Where'd they go?
Right. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't get it.
I don't understand it.
This whole thing, like I said, and it came out almost at the end of this of why. You got corrupt sheriffs. You got corrupt police chief. Even freaking they deputized half these white people that were running around.
Yeah.
Corrupt police departments. Why? Because guess what? There's supposed to be this huge depot coming in that's going to make our economy so much better. But guess what's in the way? All those damn Negroes' houses. Mm-hmm. How can we stop this?
What happened to the dude?
Right. Where is freaking Rowland?
What happened to him?
Where's Rowland?
And the girl.
Right.
Nobody spoke to them?
That was a whole fucking charade, I think.
That's what I'm saying.
I think she was paid to scream.
That's what I'm saying. All this took off of him grabbing her arm after she even admitted.
Oh, it was, and nothing happened to this guy. How did the story ever? Is there a way to figure that out? Oh, Dick Rowland. What happened to this piece of shit? Grabbing white people's arms. You don't do that. Dick Rowland. What are you thinking?
I don't even know.
And it says 60s, 1960s, maybe. Oh, wow.
Okay, the case against Dick Rowland was dismissed in September of 1921, a couple months afterwards. Dismissal followed the receipt of a letter by the county attorney from Sarah Page in which she stated she not wish to prosecute the case. She said that in the beginning before anything even happened. Most historians agree that Rowland escaped Tulsa after the massacre. Several reports say that Tulsa Sheriff Willard McCullough took Rowland to Kansas City, although he may have secretly returned to Tulsa in the fall.
He had to. In September, that's when he was acquitted. He had to go to court.
Well, they could still acquit him. Rowland may have been killed in a wharf explosion in Oregon in the 60s, although his name does not appear on the list of people killed. Dick Rowland is remembered in an opera about the tale of Capone. So that's it. Nobody knows.
In the whole beginning, I think it was a lovers' little quarrel.
Nobody knows, dude.
I think that's exactly what it was.
Nobody knows. He just left.
She didn't want to press charges, Sarah Page. She wanted to press charges because she was having relations with an African-American boy in 1921. Which was, that's a lynching for both.
Right. Well, not for her, maybe. She could just claim that she raped him. He raped her.
Yeah, that's what they wanted.
I don't know. Crazy stuff here. Yeah. Tulsa's a piece of shit.
All right.
The police are pieces of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Hey, let's have them sell them back their land.
They were running alcohol through the town, through the police, which with
stolen cars.
Right. Which it was prohibition, so it was illegal and throughout the whole United States. So Tulsa was basically running on their own law. Like I said, this is 1850s, 1860s shit going on here.
What kind of mobsters were in Tulsa in 1921? Probably a lot, right?
A lot.
Yeah. Wow. That, folks, is where we leave this one. This is close to probably 2 hours.
This is rough.
Here.
This is rough.
It's a 2 hour one.
And we still didn't even get to the bottom of it. We don't even know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. They try to hide this shit for years. Who knows
what else is out there, right?
Right. They try to hide this shit for years. Mm-hmm. We didn't learn about it in school. They just now started learning about it in school in 2020 in Oklahoma.
Right.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
As usual, anything we missed or think we got wrong, email us at bangdangpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know. And
the whole start of this thing, Dick Rowland supposedly assaulted a Mrs. Sarah Page, and that was forgotten within the first 3 hours of the event.
Nobody even knows anything.
It was
gone.
Yeah, it was just a reasoning to start this whole thing. Guess what? We got this railroad coming in, boys.
The police chief was probably like, "Finally, we got our chance to. We need this depot and blah blah blah." Something happened. Right. Something funky happened there.
Right. There's some behind the scenes shit there.
Regardless, probably one of the worst cover ups. I thought the FBI.
I'm sure once we get to the mafia, I bet. Once we get to the mafia or more, some stories can come in Tulsa. I'd watch.
Maybe.
Watch.
With that being said, it was a long one, but like I said, we missed anything, email us and let us know. And go check out Battles of the American Civil War and This Week in Sports History. We'll be back next week for probably another shooting of some kind. So join us.
It is Outlaws and Gunslingers.
Exactly. We'll be back next week for the Mouth Michiganders with
Bang Dang.